Hello again. Okay, I wanted to, before getting into housing stuff of my rant, wanted to talk a little bit more about not just student loans, but I think what they represent, which is basically like government funded debt. Because the story of basically my whole life has been Bill Clinton, balanced budget, maybe with dot-com stuff, whatever. And then it's just been an insane hockey stick of debt in our country, which is, there's words like irresponsible or stupid or financially blah, 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 blah. I just think it's like I think it's existential. Like it's like you take on debt, you're assuming that you're going to be able to pay it off, right? Or die and not care, and then it passes to someone. And I think when it comes to things like student loans is the best example probably of like it's the crazy amount of debt that you can take on. It is not something you can ever really give up. From what I understand, even if you declare bankruptcy, student loans don't go away, government funded ones. And it's not clear that there's value behind the loans. Like you take out these massive loans and get a degree, and it's not clear that you accumulate, let's say you take out $250,000 worth of loans, that you created that amount of value, plus all the interest, which is even more. Do the math. It's not $250,000. It's 300, 400, 500, depending on how quickly you paid off the interest rates. It's not clear to me that any of this debt should exist. And not just from a scarcity, like these universities don't take in enough people and then they just pump out a lot of debt. But I was talking with my friend about other people that have basically ended up in the same field as I am in tech, and they didn't get a degree that was hundreds of thousands of dollars with or without debt. They just got 2 year degrees. They went to community college. And a woman I worked with, she 2 years community college and transferred to UVA and was paying in state, right? So got basically the same job as me. Her degree cost a fraction of mine, right? Maybe a quarter or a half because she only did community college and then 2 years at a 4 year. And there's arguments that, she couldn't have maybe gotten the same access to people over that time, blah, blah, blah. But that's not clear to me. I mean, I think she's doing about as well as I am with a significant price difference. But I feel like with this debt, you're slapping in an 18-year-old's hand essentially a crazy amount of debt for an indeterminate expected value, like future return. And I would say if you had the chance to go to like Harvard or something like that, you should take on that debt because it's like probably life changing going to a school like that. But if you're going to like Trump University or DeVry, one of these other places, like the online only universities, University of Phoenix is like a great example. Is this debt like commensurate with the value you extract? And I think the answer is just always no. Like there's there's like no amount of debt that's worth it because the course of your life is just not significantly changed. Anecdote. I know someone who did an online university, got their degree, and didn't have a job for years. And then the job that they got is not a job that I think that degree helped them get. Like totally different major, didn't know any of the people from like doing that degree. It just makes me it's just so bothersome. I feel like debt is it's like a massive misunderstood instrument that many people have exposure to through things like student loans. I think home loans are very different. Probably talk about that. I think they're also bad because homes are so freaking expensive, and I'm gonna rant about that after. But I don't think 18-year-olds like I think of myself as an 18-year-old. No freaking anything. I was of time I spent on a computer playing games, and you know I was good at calculus maybe, but was I good at making financial decisions about my future or knowing what I wanted to do? I did a physics major. I work in tech. When people are like, "Oh, you got the wrong degree" or whatever, I mean, I got the wrong degree as far as like what I do. I use 0% of the knowledge I acquired, right? The calculus stuff, I mean, that's just not what I do now. I use 100% of like the connections I made, right? That's how I got my first job, and I have very good friends from the school. But that's not the major. And if I didn't have those connections or friends and I just had the major, I would have spent a lot of money to get something that I still didn't use. And it's not to fault the schools, which I already faulted them. I think they're stupid with their scarcity stuff. And it's not to fault banks or governments who are creating all these big loans. I think they're bad. I think the fault is expectations, like expecting that an 18-year-old knows what they're taking on, or even someone of any age. It doesn't have to be 18. The person I know is not 18, but debt is like a redirection of money, right? Like you're not expected to pay like the 200 grand immediately. You're expected to pay it over time. What that means is like it's an obligation every month that you pay some amount of money. And if you want to do something like go travel, buy a house, do something financially for yourself, you become constrained by whatever the debt load is on yourself. And like student loan debt isn't even the worst kind of debt. It's just, I think it's mixed bag. Like credit card debt's, I think that's the worst debt ever created. The fact that these rates are like 20+%, I just don't even understand how that's legal. Buy now, pay later. I mean, these are all, uh, they're just ways to redirect money, right? From essentially from poor people. Like if you're a rich person and you have a massive credit card like debt load, I think you're kind of silly because you should be able to just pay cash for things or pay off your credit card completely. But if you're poor and you hit some financial emergency, your credit card is your lifeline. Like, or you're getting a line of credit from a bank, but it's going to be similar. It's going to be with some interest. Just credit cards are easier to use and come with much higher interest rates. And I think people people talk about compounding. It's the idea, right? If you have a pile of money, it's like $10 and it grows at 8% per year. It's not going to be like in 30 years, it's not going to be like $50. It's going to be like 10, it's going to be hundreds or thousands of dollars, right? Because the interest, gets interest on it. So you get this like growing effect. But it works in reverse where like you make money and then you acquire a huge load of debt and then all of your money is reduced down to this tiny portion, this little straw that you can drink through that you live off of. And so the banks and credit card companies, they make tons of money off of you over time, right? They're just pulling away all your paycheck to themselves. And your compounding goes against you. Like it is what keeps people poor. I mean, why are people living paycheck to paycheck? It could be their wages. Wages have been some, like look at different graphs. There's things showing it flat, down, whatever. I think it's all debt obligations that keep people poor. And those debt obligations come in the form of loans, credit card debts, and it can be even houses, like being house poor, if you have the opportunity to get that. I think rent is, about the housing affordability. I think rent is like the most obvious form of like, it's an obligation. Like you have to live somewhere, unless you're homeless, and then you pick somewhere outside. Maybe not by choice, but you don't have to pay. If you're renting, you are giving whatever percent of your paycheck to someone so that you have somewhere to live. And that really, for most Americans, is like their biggest expense. It's like where they live. It's either a big house payment, or if they're old enough, then they don't have that big house payment. They have a small one or no house payment. Or it's their rent, which is money that's given so that you have the opportunity to live somewhere. And there's guys like, there's Ramit Sethi, he's all about like, oh, I invest everything in the stock market and I just rent. And, he's he's a smarter dude than I, so when it comes to this stuff. But he also lives in New York City, which New York City has an effed up rental ownership market. And I live in California now. It's exactly the same as a ref. It's completely effed up ownership market. I mean, there's just like I'm gonna rant about after this is just there's just nothing to buy down here that's even remotely affordable. Like unless you're a Californian who's been living here, but then if you think about it, it's like relatively affordable, right? You just cash in your house and get another one that's as overpriced. But if you move from Arkansas, you sell your $200,000, $300,000 single family home, you can afford nothing here in California. You can afford like Central Valley apartments or single family homes that are probably falling apart, to be honest. It's just the average home price in San Diego is $1 million. In LA, I'm sure it's higher than that. It's just insane. And all of that comes with debt obligations. University tuitions come with big debt obligations that aren't required. Like, no one's saying you must go to school. But I think there is a huge push in the United States to go to school, and with it to take on a debt burden that I don't know if it is always worth it. I started talking about like government debt and the way that governments issue debt. You might know this better than me, is bonds. Basically, they say buy this treasury for $900, and then we'll give it back to you for 930 or 940 after some period of time, right? Whatever the percent like appreciation is on the interest for that bond. That is how the U.S. government manages its debt, so that it issues treasuries, you buy them, and then it uses the money that you gave them to do all sorts of crazy stuff, including spending $1 trillion on healthcare, $1 trillion on blowing stuff up. I think at this point, basically $1 trillion on feeding people, which you could argue is a good thing, except 20% of that is like soda. I think the danger of debt is just like the danger of money, is that it's fungible. Money can let you have access to something you've always wanted. It can also be the mechanism by which you do horrible things like kill people or enslave, you know. It's not laughing that it's funny, laughing that it's just so sad, right? You know, we talk about we don't have slavery anymore, but sex slavery, sex trafficking, that all happens, and money is the mechanism, right? But this is the way that things happen in this world, is money. Debt is the other side of money, right? It's like a promise. I promise you this amount of money and you will give me more back. And I think the real danger of debt, with its the fact that it can be used for anything, is that you can take on debt that just isn't worth it. You can buy something with a credit card and end up paying $500 for a nice dinner at a five-star restaurant, whatever it is. That dinner, if you don't pay it off immediately, isn't $500. It's $600. It's $700. It's however long you take the tail of the minimum payment interest. You can do calculators online. It's the longer you want your debt to last, the the larger it will be, the total payment. And you can make arguments about, oh, inflation, all this stuff. I think that's all because of debt. Like, there's money that doesn't exist, right? When a bank lends money, which is like how all these debt obligations get created, you give the bank $100, they can lend out portions of that money in a way that it ends up being hundreds of dollars. There's this concept of fractional reserve banking. They only have to keep 10% of the money, whatever it is. They issue a loan and they say that this amount of money exists now, but that doesn't exist in the bank. It exists on balance sheets as debt and interest and all these obligations. And I think things will just reach a breaking point. Like medical debt, educational debt, home debt is like the biggest bubble of my life, right? 2007, 2008 was essentially a housing debt bubble. Like people had massive mortgages on expensive houses and they defaulted and didn't pay them. And so these companies like Lehman that are worth billions of dollars become worth nothing. And it's all chicanery, magic, whatever you want to call it. But eventually debt gets paid, and there's only two ways to pay debt. You financially like give the money, or you default and you say I'm not paying it, and then the things that are built have their value built on the debt collapse, right? Like the government, the U.S. government, which issues all these loans, if they forgive all the debt, they have effectively printed money, right? They've injected $1 trillion or whatever the student loan debt is into the economy. That's that's how inflation works. Like you print money, stuff becomes more expensive. If we want to fix anything in this country, related to how cost works, it can't be with debt. Like this is the problem is backwards. if if we're gonna tax everyone to death to fix it, we're gonna tax all the billionaires in California. It's not gonna make the debt disappear. Debt is an obligation that you create with documents to make people pay you money over time to increase the amount of money on balance sheets. I don't think taxes fix that. You just essentially try and redirect money on this fancy balance sheet setup. But it's financial trickery. There's no other word for it. Like if you take all of Elon Musk's money, like all of his shares, and you sell them and you give them to the US government, does that fix the education system? Does that fix student loans, for example? Because what did you probably do in that process? You probably crashed the value of his companies in some way. You probably messed with financial markets. So you are changing where the money is. And things will just flood towards it. They'll be like, oh, now there's all this money in education, so how can I extract value from there? The the country that we live in was founded on people that didn't want to pay taxes, right? There's a huge amount of debt that came out of that experience too of fighting a war. The way that they fixed it is that they had a central bank, and then they issue things like scrip. They create other instruments to basically move debt around. But debts get paid down, like I said, two ways. You have the money to pay it, so you grow the economy or whatever it is, or you default. And I don't see the US doing the growth thing, because say what you want about AI. You can say it's the worst thing ever. It's the only thing that's really growing, but I see a huge backlash coming. I see all the Democrats, populist people, they're going to shut down all these data centers and stuff. What's going to make up the growth? Who are you taxing? Like all these people that are making all their money, like rockets, like that's it. That's all we have after that. Debt is dangerous.